So I'm Julian Adams. I'm trained as a scientist. I got my PhD in chemistry over 40 years ago. I spent my whole career in industry, 10 years at pharma, 30 years in biotech. I have 4 approved drugs, so I've been through the gauntlet. And with my last approval last year in bone marrow transplantation, I saw the light and I moved into the nonprofit world. And I think this is going to be an extremely disruptive talk. So let me introduce Stand Up to Cancer. I joined them as a scientific advisor 15 years ago at their inception. 9 Hollywood women from the entertainment industry founded Stand Up to Cancer as a philanthropy designed to raise money for research in cancer. And that's in fact our mission. It's our mission to raise funds to detect, intercept, and treat cancers with the aspiration to cure all patients. For the first time, we're using the word cure. This was a banned word for the 15 years that I was, but now that I'm the boss, I guess I should change the rules. We have an extraordinary scientific community. It's a global community. It's chaired by Bill Nelson, who's the Cancer Center Director at Hopkins. The vice chair is John Carpton, Cancer Center Director at City of Hope. And then finally, the great Arnie Levine, who discovered P53, the most notorious tumor suppressor. And then we have about 40 to 50 members of the scientific community. For this genotype of colorectal cancer. The second is something I'm also very proud of, and is going to lead into the future of what we're going to do. Is we funded mRNA vaccines for pancreatic cancer. When in the adjuvant setting, meaning post-surgery, patients will get an immunotherapy. They'll get chemotherapy to consolidate the surgery, but then they'll get a vaccine. And what we saw is that about half the patients have 2 years of undetectable disease. The patients that relapsed also had their spleens removed. That's part of the Whipple procedure. Sometimes there's splenic involvement. And so when I say leverage, Genentech has taken this discovery that we funded and published last year in Nature and are now running a randomized study. I also happen to be the chairman in my spare time of a cancer vaccine company. This will be an off-the-shelf vaccine, not like the mRNA vaccines that are personalized. There's an algorithm to determine which antigens are given back to the patient. So I'm running a study also in the same setting of pancreatic cancer, doing a randomized study. Our phase 1 data were published last week at AACR. And we actually saw antigen spread, which is what you want a vaccine to do. You want the vaccine to recognize the tumor antigens, but then to spread so that there's no escape mechanism. And I would show you all these nice data. So where are we going next? I've taken a deliberate stance that in the next 5 years, our goal is to reduce mortality from cancer by 25% and by 50% in the next 10 years. So that's my retirement plan. For the next 10 years, this is what we're going to focus on. And the way we're going to do it, well, the basis of believing that is we've seen early detection in prostate and breast. Over the last 40 years, deaths have been reduced by 50% in both those diseases. Certain other diseases we're clearly not doing well, in glioblastoma or pancreatic cancer, but certainly this is applicable really to any cancer. And if we can detect it early, we can intercept it and now vaccinate. There are other multimodal treatments as well, but the vaccination is now, we're going to see in the next 3 years, at least 4 approvals. There are randomized studies in pancreas, colorectal, and lung, and they're all underway, and including big pharma.
Is that where the word cure is going to come in?
That's where the word cure is going to rear.
Which is
So-
never used in the context of cancer.
That's exactly, that's correct. So what we are facing, though, is a revolutionary disruptive approach that really will disrupt pharma and biotech. Pharma and biotech's business model is to treat late-stage disease, and you're fighting for months of survival. If you get 6 months, great. A year, great. But basically, metastatic disease ultimately means the demise of the patient. So we are now going to solicit scientists and start multiplexing very large data sets. We have omics of every variety, genomics, transcriptomics, proteomics, metabolomics. We have ever more non-invasive blood tests that are more sensitive and more specific. And we will need to put this into a large language model to do machine learning. It's not possible to absorb these data. Imagine I have an equation that has 1,000 variables. There we are.
You are in the meeting now.
I'm in the meeting now.
Sure, if you're presenting.
Well, you have to treat
Okay,
it.
you're in.
Yeah.
You can't,
And
if left untreated, it will
Right.
develop
make it here.
into fulminant disease.
So like the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation
You should have shown us how to do
funded a
it.
lot of their research by
He will lose his job.
royalties.
He will lose his job.
Nah.
Yes.
And then,
So
are you doing that?
So we are setting up a philanthropy advisory group
Yeah.
and an LLC that can aggregate IP and just like the cystic
Because you're
fibrosis.
funding all this research, if you
Yeah.
take a royalty in return.
Yeah.
Then later, when any of those.
Yes.
then you can
It'll
fund
be an
more
annuity that
research.
that continues to feed the.
And now
The
you kind
research.
of double click on that, because I mean, when we started, one of the beautiful things about the stand-up model was the speed at which they wanted to deploy the funds and get the projects up and running. So early on, top Nobel laureate advisors said, if you get into IP and you look at this, it's gonna slow down speed. And that was the big goal, was take the funds as quickly as possible, get them out the door, put out a call for ideas and get research started. Now, 15 years later, we're looking at a more sustainable, diversified funding model for the organization.
And so we've had a shift, we met with our board, and we've had a shift in trying to be more like the cystic fibrosis.
I think many family offices would want to participate with you one way or the other in terms of your direction, your research, what you're doing.
Yeah.
You know, help to catalyze some of the things you're trying to accomplish, et cetera.
The goal of this particular meeting is to try to, this is a Manhattan project, because there's hundreds of cancers. And we're really going to try to fund what we call dream teams, that's $6 to $10 million per malignancy. And start to amplify this on a massive scale.
So how much are you funded to date is one of my first question. Second question is, are you planning or are you partnering with Big Pharma to do this,
We are.
to expand the
Yeah.
market? Because I was involved in early diagnosis, some early diagnostic.
So these are
companies.
all our partners. We're partnered
Okay,
with
Wow.
the American Association of Cancer Research,
okay,
and you name it, we're partnered with the foundation and or the pharma company,
okay.
big and small. And
the
everything
third-
is peer reviewed, rigorously assessed on a twice a year basis.
Okay, and then one of the biggest challenges, at least from an equity perspective, or bringing in capital without the philanthropic aspect of it, is that the margins are very slow, or very small for diagnostics. So it's not a market that investors were typically interested in, or pharma.
Precisely. The
So no
benefit
one was
is-
interested in
the benefit
driving
is
that
clear.
market.
The benefit is your parents and your children will not die of cancer.
No, I know,
So
believe me,
that's,
I get it, I'm in
this is,
cancer,
this
but
is
yeah.
not a money-making venture.
Right, that's my
So it's bad
point.
as real
It's
estate.
gonna take a lot of capital to change the ecosystem, so it has to be philanthropy. Yeah.
This is, there is no reason that we are living the way we are with cancer, as it's such a devastating disease, and treating it in stage 3, stage 4 disease when it's run out of control.
Have you funded any tissue banks yet?
We've worked with Multiple Myeloma Research Foundation. They have a myeloma tissue bank that we work with multiple tissues. That's really old technology. And it's hit a limit of what you can learn from harvesting tissue.
And I assume you're also looking at metastatic cancer when it reoccurs.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course. So the ideal patient to treat is someone who's had surgical resection, no evidence of disease, but at risk for relapse, which is always the case in pancreatic cancer, or patients who've been put into remission by whatever regimen was appropriate for them. And there's minimal residual disease, and we're getting very good at detecting it, 10 to the minus 6 ratios. And that's when the vaccination can occur and be effective. If you someone has a kilo of tumor, no vaccine is going to work. And we've had just hundreds of negative trials in the past, and this is why this is so hard to fund. But we're now seeing it, and a lot of it has been fueled by the COVID pandemic, where mRNA vaccines are now credentialed, and now are credentialed in cancers.
Research funding, Julian, are you looking at sort of everything from the beginning, so vaccination, early detection, to all the way to sort of late stage? How are you thinking about sort of funding research?
We're going to rebalance our portfolio. This also has the benefit of dealing with health disparities, because a blood test, a non-invasive blood test, can be applied to all. If you read Bruce Ratner's book, he talks about the horrors of the mammogram, because there's a 10% false positive rate. So if you're a woman that's getting a mammogram for 10 years, you have a 60% chance of getting an unnecessary finding.
60?
60%.
Yeah, it's quite, it's quite a bad test. And of course, we're not going to take that away from anybody.
Right.
We can't change the society at that level, but we could do better. And with blood tests, I think we will do better. We will intervene early.
Sorry, follow up to that. How are you prioritizing your projects? And so just with the rigorous scientific review, but you still have to sort of prioritize, or, which one gets, more funding than.
This has been our historical portfolio. We invested because we were partnered with Lustgarten. We've done a lot of work in pancreatic cancer. But really every cancer is going to need its own treatment. If you've heard of GRAIL, they have this multi-cancer early detection test. It's about 30% effective. It's not good enough in early detection. So we need to do much, much better. And each cancer, I think, is going to have its own biochemistry and biology.
Are you focusing on driving through NGS or any particular platform technology? Or
Yeah,
just
Illumina is the platform technology for sequencing.
Yeah.
RNA-seq is for RNA. We use mass spec technology for proteomics and metabolomics. So that's just everything you can measure from the blood. But with the wearables, you can have 24/7 monitoring. For example, your metabolic rate drops dramatically when you're asleep. So a diurnal fluctuation, we have no idea what the cancer is doing when your metabolic rate stops. Maybe it takes advantage of less glucose to your organs, and maybe the cancer is just chewing up glucose and growing while you're asleep. We're going to measure these things and learn about how to intercept them.
Are your partners donating their EHR to you?
Yeah, that's going to be sort of hospital by hospital.
Yeah.
The only really good record that we have is the VA. The VA, it's poorly curated, but it's the only good national record we have. Who will eventually go and fund these things? Large employers. If you have 100,000 employees, you're spending hundreds of millions of dollars in healthcare fees. They're the obvious funders, not the insurance companies. I mistakenly or naively thought insurance companies should pony up. They don't care. They'll raise the rates and raise the premiums. They pass it on to the consumer. But the large employers will be the first adopters. And of course, CMS.
So Laura, to your question about the portfolio, about, how this is our historical, like over 15 years, this is where we spend our time, prioritizing is we're the type of organization where people come to us and say, I want to do a project in honor and memory of my mother, my grandmother, rinse it, any of those, my father, my brother, right? So we'll work with those families, which is what, Marty and I initially started talking about is we work with the families to understand their aim. So we say, is it, you want to fund young investigators? Do you want to focus on breast cancer? We'll create a project and that family will be part of the process from the start of creating and outlining the aims all the way through all the review cycles. So they're invited to sit at the table with the researchers at our meetings and understand and know that their philanthropic dollars are being put to good use. And our reviewers, as Julian mentioned, are Nobel laureates and similar level individuals who are making sure that the teams are hitting the progress points that we want to see in the projects.
And I would be remiss if we have a steady revenue stream of $15 to $20 million. We're partnered with American Airlines, MasterCard, and Major League Baseball. And you've all seen that. I'm sure you've all seen
Oh, yeah.
that placard moment.
Moment of
Yeah.
silence where, So these big companies help us raise awareness
That's it.
for our research and use their networks to help leverage to support this.
Now, are you doing anything? It sounds like it's all your local projects are early stage. You're doing things for companies that are already in development,
Oh,
have
yeah,
some
yeah.
ideas.
It's all cancer is bad.
Oh, right.
It's
Well,
not
I
like we're
understand.
ignoring.
Well, we had 3 or 4 cancer companies today
Yeah,
present
yeah,
talk. So
yeah.
the question is really, if they're through phase 1 or approaching phase 2, are you getting involved at that stage? Where are you looking?
We typically do phase 1s, proof of concept. We have done a couple of phase 2s as well. We've even done a couple of randomized studies. Depends on the funding that we can put together. And then we give it back to pharma. But we leave money on the table. We leave royalty dollars, future royalty dollars on the table. That's going to change.
Well, they've got a royalty expert right across from you.
Something that's quickly disrupting the market, including oncology, is AI's use in drug development and discovery. So right now, I'm working with a couple companies that are looking at the genomic clusters that are the causal factors of different cancer types. And so you can actually determine by doing a genomic test if you're at risk for certain cancer types,
Yeah,
even
so-
before you get cancer.
So
cells.
heritable.
I don't know if you guys doing that or.
BRCA. Of course, we're doing all of those things. The question is the sensitivity and specificity of the test. Can you detect 100 cells? Can you detect 100,000 cells before there's a measurable lump? Because right now, your typical solid tumor is detected by a CT scan or a PET CT where you already have a large mass. So it's either operable or inoperable. It's either treatable or there's no treatment, like sarcomas are very difficult to treat. And that's 100 different diseases, by the way. So all of this is now going to be enabled by the AI platforms that are just going to improve the sensitivity of our measures, the accuracy.
And this event you're having next month, is that gonna be on Zoom? Will
No,
you be able to dial
it's
in?
a private event at the History of the Computer Science Museum in Mountain View. And it's going to be a closed session, out of which will come out a white paper that we're going to try to have published in a leading cancer journal.
And our objective is, we have for these executive committees, that we can work with you on helping you with special projects. We're bi-coastal.
Yep.
So we have a lot of people in Los Angeles, for example, and in San Francisco. And obviously we have a ton of people here as well.
We can still invite people. So I'm still taking names. If anybody is interested in this, come and be a witness to this, what I think is going to be an extraordinary. Norm?
So what you're seeing here today is the beginning of a tremendously important relationship that IvyFON is having with Stand Up to Cancer. Julian's going to be back Sean's gonna be back talking about progress. And the key is the capital. The key is getting the capital. And one of the models that we're suggesting is the Sesame Street model. You all know what Sesame Street is, $150 billion a year to produce and distribute the Sesame Street programs. You've never heard anyone ask for a donation to Sesame Street. Why is that? Sesame Street has taken their intellectual property, licensed it out, books, pajamas, movies, television programs. That's the model for Stand Up to Cancer. More sophisticated than pajamas and socks, which, by the way, if you want socks, they have great socks. But seriously, that's really how Stand Up to Cancer is going to turn out to be a resource with this kind of self-sustaining financial capability, where they're not walking around begging for money, what I sometimes refer to as tin cup philanthropy. And that ties in with how Marty is talking about the concierge philanthropy. So this is not the only time you're going to be hearing Julian and Sean and Marty talk about this. This is a strategic initiative. You'll be thinking about it. You're going to be talking to your network. You're going to be talking to your clients to tell them that you've heard some revolutionary science from Mark DeSouza, some revolutionary thoughts from Julian, and really grateful for Marty to give us this platform.
And in terms of, you asked about biobanking, we actually partnered with CRUK, Cancer Research UK. They have a massive biobank initiative right now that we will have access to. So that will continue to go, and it'll be much better curated. The problem is when we learned how to sequence the human genome in 2000, it had 10,000 mistakes. We just didn't have accurate sequencing. So the NGS, next generation sequencing, does deep sequencing. So we get accuracy. It comes at a cost, but at the end of the day, multiplexing all these technologies will save lives.
You've heard of the full body MRI scans that are now coming out. You know,
Nonsense.
is it an opportunity to say, hey, we can pair with them as a follow-on?
It's not scalable.
No,
With health disparities being what they are, it only creates more disparity.
right.
It isn't scalable. You cannot scan 100 million people. It's just not scalable. And
But Kim Kardashian has a lot of friends.
yeah, okay.
That's about it.
She, and she's ethnically diverse, of course.
I had a
Look,
question.
all I'm saying is we can do better, and that this is the blueprint for it.
Okay, last question.
I wanted to ask how you work with other cancer nonprofits, and do you just funnel if it's a funding that's coming to them that's directed for research, then could they?
We match funding. Sometimes we're more than 50%, sometimes they're more than 50%. And we have it's a closed review session, but our partners are all invited. It's a big tent.
Fantastic. Wow, great job. Thank you so much. Dinner, we're back here tomorrow at 9 a.m. We're not actually back here. We're gonna be at Boltonelli. So we'll see you guys tomorrow. It's gonna be a short day. And some of us have dinner right now. So thanks so much.